What's going on, guys? Tyler Yasuda here of Titanium Fitness, and let me just say, I feel like I've been killing it with uploads recently. I think this is like my third upload in like a week and a half or something, or it will be. It'll go up in 2 days. Anyway, besides the point, the idea right now is to maintain at least once a week upload frequency. So every week you'll see a video like this. The episodes are going to be kind of the same format every time. We'll have an informational bit, which is coming up in a little bit. The second portion will be kind of a training update for you guys, and the third portion will be usually either something from my life or just philosophy, whatever you want to call it. Before I get into the informational bit, I do want to share with you guys, as always, I do offer online coaching face-to-face, so we'll have video calls every week, unlimited email access, and of course custom training and nutrition programming. If that's something that you're interested in and you think you might want to work with me, shoot me an email at the email address down below. I'll also put it across the screen here, or shoot me a message on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram for more frequent updates, more good informational stuff there as well. Time for the informational portion of this. This is from the suggestion of somebody who follows me on Instagram, so I forget who the user was, but thank you. And I'm totally open to stuff like this. If you guys have any suggestions, drop me a comment down below, and I'll see if I can't make that into a video. But we're going to talk about injuries today and what you should do about them. But before I get into that too much, I want to tell you guys a brief story. So in 2014, and if you've been following me since then, I appreciate you. But 2014 was the last time I competed in both bodybuilding and powerlifting. And for me, it was about to be a big deal because it was the first time for me competing in powerlifting. And it was also my last season as a team competitor in bodybuilding and my first one as a men's open competitor. I had a bunch of titles that in my head I wanted to defeat or to defend. I had been undefeated to this point as a team competitor, and I thought that was a big deal, so that was really important to me. But like midway through prep, like I want to say like maybe half or two-thirds of the way through prep, on April 23rd, 2014, I tore two muscles in my leg during a set of squats. I tore my TFL and VL. Your tensor fasciae lata is like this muscle right here on the outside of your hip. Your vastus lateralis is the outer portion, like that kind of outer quad sweep. Both were grade 2 tears, so not bad enough that it required surgery, but bad enough that the doctor told me I would be out for between 2 and 3 months minimum, like completely out of the gym. And I think I stayed out of the gym entirely for like 7 weeks. I didn't touch a weight at all. Did everything I could to not go crazy in that time and recover as best I could. And then after that, I got back into training very slowly, and then things picked up. At the end of all that, though, I ended up still competing in both sports. I defended all the titles I wanted to as a teen. I also won my pro card in the NGA the day before I turned 20, which was kind of cool. And then that season, I ended up setting the California state total record in powerlifting. It was USPA under 23 class. So all in all, it worked out well, but a lot of that I can attribute to the way I went about recovering. And even since then, like looking back, knowing what I do now, I think there's so many things I could have done better that probably would have either kept my head on a little straighter and or accelerated recovery. The first step, I would say, though, is diagnosis. The way I would go about this, for myself, is kind of being mindful of the fact that not everybody has unlimited money and or access to healthcare. But if you do, great, go get it evaluated immediately. For now, what I would say is post-injury, give yourself a few days. I'd say between 2 days and maybe even a week. If things improve significantly in that time to the point that it goes from like actual pain or discomfort to being almost nothing, you might be okay to train around it. If you decide to do that, you want to keep in mind that you do need time to recover, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. But try not to load that specific muscle or that area that's affected, and try to avoid anything that causes pain or discomfort. But if in that, whatever period of time, let's say a week's time has gone by and you don't see significant improvement, you're still in about the same amount of pain, same amount of discomfort, and you still don't know what's going on, I would at that point very strongly recommend you go see a PT. And I know that finding a good PT can be hard. A lot of times you have to go to the doctor first, get a referral out for physical therapy. But getting that evaluated professionally, I think, is the best way to go because they can give you actual specific recommendations and tell you to be sure that whatever you're doing is putting on the right path toward recovery. Second thing I want to talk about is rest. Post-injury, probably the most important thing for you to do is to take some time off from training whatever you just injured. A lot of people that I coach ask me post-injury, what can they do to get better faster? And for sure, there are things you can do, and that kind of depends on your specific situation. But the biggest factor in your recovery is going to be allowing enough time for you to actually heal. And you have to be really patient with this because the last thing you would want is to Let's say you're, in your early 20s, maybe you're a teenager, maybe you're a little bit older, but you're still fairly young. Most likely, if you're watching my channel, you're still fairly young. If you get injured now and you let yourself recover to like 80-90%, and you decide at that point you're going to start training full force again, and you never fully recovered, you'll probably have that same injury recurring again later on, where it'll always be kind of like a little nagging pain, something that's always in the back of your head that you always kind of feel, you're always kind of worried about. And the last thing you would want, the last thing anybody would want for themselves is to be, 30, 40 years old complaining about all these old injuries. We all know those guys in the gym who tell us, they're like usually older, they're like 50, 60 years old, telling us how when they were your age, they could bench press 4 million pounds, they could squat 8 gajillion pounds. And they can't do it at all anymore because they are so broken from all these old injuries they've accumulated. So to avoid getting into that position, just make sure that when you do take time to recover, you give yourself enough time to recover 100% before trying to do anything really strenuous with whatever you've just injured. Number 3. The third thing here is going to be rehab and recovery. So other than rest, which of course is probably the biggest component here, I would say if you have access to physical therapists, if that's the route that you go or that you have to go out of necessity, follow their instructions. Do everything that they tell you to do. Be sure to ask what you can be doing outside of your PT sessions. Things that you can be doing at home. A lot of them should be good enough that they should recommend those things anyway, but be sure you ask anyway, so you have things you can be working on your own to actually make that progress. I want to give you a quick example. Many of you guys probably know Lane Norton, and whether or not you're a fan of him as a person, I do think that you can respect him as a lifter. And if you remember when he got injured from his squat way back when, I distinctly remember him in this case of that injury because he took the same sort of intensity he had in training and applied that to physical therapy. I admire the fact that he had the same sort of focus and intensity in recovery and with rehab as he did in his normal training. I think that's crucial. If you're going to go through rehab, if you're going to pay somebody to help you with that, you want to make sure you're giving that your full effort. On the off chance that you decide to not go that route of getting evaluated, getting PT, going to rehab, etc., or if you can't afford it, the next best thing, honestly, I would say is to do some research on your own. Now, disclaimer, I'm not a physical therapist, I'm not a doctor, and even if I were, I wouldn't be able to evaluate you through a video call or through this video as well. So take this for what it is with a massive grain of salt. There are plenty of good resources out there. I will put a short list of some that I can think of off the top of my head over on the screen somewhere over here. Places you can go to kind of look up common injuries or common problems that you might be dealing with and how to deal with them. All that said though, keep in mind anytime you make a general recommendation through a video or a written article, that applies in generality, but it's not very specific. So you might need more specific advice than that, and in that case you kind of are forced into a corner where if you can't afford it, you might have to save up to go to PT. But number 4, prevention. This should actually probably precede all of this, but most people don't think about prevention before they get injured. They usually start thinking about it after their first injury. If there was something wrong with your technique that you think might have caused your injury or contributed to your injury, fix that aspect of your lifting technique first. That's the first thing you should do. I know it can be tough, especially if you're already really strong. Let's say, my cat's freaking out. If you're already really strong, taking the time to, make a step back, maybe get a little bit weaker or drop your working numbers down quite a lot in order to make these technical changes, that might suck, but it would suck a whole lot more to continue to get re-injured. A lot of powerlifters especially follow this kind of conventional path of not really learning how to do a lift at all. They kind of just do it however they do it. They get really, really strong there, and one of two things will happen. They'll either plateau because their technique won't allow them to move any farther, or they will get injured because their technique is so bad. And in either case, it requires that you address your technical issues to move on. So I would say, like, bar none, whoever you are, if you're lifting weights, you want to learn how to lift weights properly as early as you can, so that past that point you can make sustainable progress. If you can identify any bad habits in your lifestyle or throughout your day, and whether or not they played a role in your injury or make you more prone for future injuries, those are things you want to address as well. Do whatever preventive work you can to keep yourself in the best shape possible. A great example of that is, for me, when I first started working this job where I was, coaching people online, I would sit at a desk for most of the hours of the day. And whenever I went to go train, especially when I went to go train squats, because I was always sitting slightly in flexion with my pelvis tilted backward a little bit, I would go into train squats, and at the bottom of my squat, I would always notice my pelvis would tilt posterior, and my back would round very slightly. And it's because I was defaulting to that quote unquote seated position, or at least partly because of that. So that's something that I could fix. And in this case now, my fix for that has been I stand at my desk, and that produces some other habitual problems as well that you can also address. But my point is just that if you notice problems in your daily life that might contribute to your injury risk, fix those as well. Now, a few final thoughts on this topic. Remember, even with perfect technique, if you could lift everything perfectly and you always lifted light weights, there's still some inherent risk in lifting. Anytime you train with weights, anytime you do athletic things or just things in general, there's always some risk associated, right? And as you get stronger, as you move more weights, as you get more muscular, your risk for injury probably just increases. But if you're worried about that and you're really scared of getting injured now, maybe it'll make you more careful, but also I'd urge you to consider, like, what would the alternative be? Like, would you just not lift because you're too afraid of getting injured? Probably not. I think the benefits that you get from lifting far outweigh the risk of getting injured if you do things right. But all that said, just keep in mind that your job in all of this is to do everything you can within your knowledge, within your power, to minimize your risk for injury. And that's the best you can do. All right, so time for a training update. This one will be a little bit shorter than usual just because I realized that the previous portion of the video went on for super long. But basically, just really quick update. Since the last time you saw my training footage in the last episode, that was the end of my last front squat cycle. I was testing maxes, hit a 465 max, which I was really happy with. The plan moving forward from there is to, I'm currently switching my squat variation over to high bar beltless squats. My bench is going to stay programmed as usual, and then my deadlift will go over to sumo all the time. My current frequency is in a single training block. I'll bench twice, squat twice, and deadlift once. And I really like that breakdown for now. My deadlift day ends up being kind of like an upper body day, just to avoid having too much lower body stimulus in comparison to my upper body. I feel like my upper body, if anything, needs more help than my lower body does in a bodybuilding sense. But anyway, here you see, I think this was 6s on bench. Pretty like moderate as far as difficulty goes, about where I want to be in this block. After this, you'll see some high bar squats, that high bar beltless. The goal with the high bar beltless squat is to go through, originally it was going to be 2 cycles. I went through like 2/3 of a cycle, and then Christina and I took some time off of training because we went on a short vacation. But in order for me to have some time off, I took off like maybe like a few days before that vacation from training, and then like a week after to catch up on work. That is the nature of running your own business, in case you're wondering. Like, whenever you take time off, it's going to require that you get way ahead and then catch up a lot afterward. I guess depending on the nature of your business, but that's how it works for me. So because I took so much time off there, I had to reset my training cycle. So now that's where I am. I'm in currently block 2 of my current training cycle. I want to see if I can run through at least this full cycle, high bar beltless, and then next cycle I might work in the belt. I might go one more cycle beltless, I'm not sure. But most likely I'll add in the belts on my high bar squats and see what I can do with that. I would really like to hit a 500+ pound high bar squat before transitioning into low bar. But the goal is eventually to get back into low bar squatting. I do realize that was my strongest squat variation, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that, but I want to kind of gradually transition there. In the meantime, though, I'm really happy with the way training's been going. My squat is definitely better than it's ever been. This session was weird. That first set right there just felt really hard. I even checked to make sure I loaded correctly. But then watching that first set on film, it looked really good. So after that, I just, I had some confidence going into this set. Bar path was real clean on most of these reps at least. And then my last set was super easy. So really happy with that session, really happy with the way things are going in training right now. It's just a matter of trying to avoid having to take time off or, massive gaps in training. But so far, so good. Anyway, I'm probably going to end this video or this voiceover here. You can watch the rest of the training footage if you feel inclined to stay. Apologies that I didn't include a kind of philosophy/life topic in this video. I just feel like this video is already long enough as is. But if you guys have any requests for future videos, let me know. Shoot me a comment down below, and I'll see if I can make something out of that. Otherwise, for now, I guess that's all I've got. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
Alright guys,